I can't really think of a character that I don't like in this show. To be honest with you, like, I love Kamina, Simone, Yoko, Kittan, Leeron. Like, I love all the characters, like, a lot. And Boota, I mean, how are you going to diss on Boota, Grant? Come on.
Watch me. 30 minutes of the podcast of me just trashing on Boota, just nonstop.
Sunglasses wearing mole. He's perfect. This week, the Wave Motion Canon's weekly anime podcast is brought to you by RightStuff.com. RightStuff.com is the home of just about anything that you're thinking of in terms of trying to buy anime products. DVDs, manga, figurines, little plushies. They've got it all over there and at really great prices as well. They constantly have stuff going on sale. Seriously, if you're not using their site, you really should. And to give you a little bit of an incentive to use their site, we have a discount code. If you want to get 10% off on eligible items at the checkout, just go ahead and use the promo code WMC plus RS. That's W as in wave, M as in motion, C as in cannon, the plus sign, R as in right, and S as in stuff. Go ahead and use that promo code and you'll get a 10% discount on all eligible items. And these items are going to be clearly marked if they're going to be eligible or not. So again, if you want to use a 10% discount code at one of the best anime sites that's out there for buying a bunch of really awesome stuff, that's going to be WMC plus RS. And now on to our show.
So welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Motion Canon. I'm Grant, one of your hosts, and here with me is Pat.
Hi, Surrybot on Twitter.
Okay, Surrey's better.
Pat's
Surrey
fine.
And the Doctor.
Hey everyone, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me on this episode.
Hi, subs.
And no problem.
Hi, subs.
Yes, I'm
Hello,
the
Patrick.
host. I had you guys on. This is my table. No, but thank you guys so much for joining in with us. Don't forget to check out our work at wavemotioncanon.com, which is at wavemotionblog on Twitter. We have a YouTube channel, which you can check that out as well. We put up we're starting to put up more and more videos on there for you. And don't forget patreon.com/wavemotioncanon, where you can help support the site and you get access to a lot of unique backer levels and tiers. You get some unique pods from Subs and I. You get some special episodes and drafts, all kinds of great stuff on there. So today's episode, we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the seminal romantic high school anime Tenga Toppa Gurren Lagann.
It's certainly moved my heart.
I
will say that.
For a second there, I really thought you were going to say seminal high school romantic anime Tenjo Tenge.
Oh, sweet lord.
And I'm like, what the? Where is this bit going? What is this joke happening?
Tengen Tenchi Gurren Lagann. That's the show we're talking about.
No need for Gurren Lagann.
So, gentlemen, who would like to give a quick summation of what exactly Gurren Lagann is for those who may
that's
not
not
know?
fair. Don't.
Because it is 10 years old at this point, which is shocking.
Don't ask me.
Very shocking.
Don't
I'm
ask me
very
to do
surprised that it's 10. I feel like it just came out.
So roughly, this is the story of Simone, who's a young man who lives underground in this sort of pit civilization with other humans, and they know that there are monsters above ground and they can't go up there. He's got a drill and a brother, Kamina, his older brother, and Kamina is always trying to encourage Simone to do better. And one day, giant robots and
not
monsters.
actually brothers.
No, just
blood brothers.
Okay.
But not
well, actually,
not of the
says
womb.
Subs.
Sorry. Yeah. Yep.
You are correct.
Mr. Well, actually.
You well actually
I
me.
finally happened.
They just call each other
finally
brother.
did it.
But monsters break through. Giant robots that and these beastmen monster robots have they're gunmen is what they're called, but they're basically a giant head with arms and legs as opposed to having a torso. and which sparks off this entire sequence. And Simone finds a tiny little one for himself, and his little drill key around his neck activates it and opens it up, and that opens up the world, and they begin adventuring, fighting off these beastmen, taking on ever larger opponents who have giant robots as well, and they meet other friends along the way, like Yoko and Kittan and all these other adventurers. And essentially the main premise of the show is that the Gurren and another robot, the Lagann, can combine due to fighting manly energy and spiral energy, and they keep building. The robot just gets bigger and bigger and bigger as they challenge the Spiral King and all these other various forces arrayed against them. But it's essentially a story about Simone and sort of learning to be himself and learning to believe in himself as he fights giant robots.
I can go with that,
Does that work?
yeah. As a very surface level bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah, very surface, and there's a lot going on there that's pretty much just the trajectory of the show initially. That's roughly what it is if you haven't seen it or if you've only seen clips. I would imagine most people are familiar with it through at least YouTube clips or images they see
We
online.
are
Yeah, it's,
definitely reaching a point where that's not going to be the case soon, though.
Yeah, sure. Most
and
definitely.
it totally, like, it follows absolutely the line that you were talking about, and it should be noted that, like, it sprawls out in a, like, the scale just gets unimaginably, like, you just kind of can't wrap your mind around the things that are happening, and the fact that it began in a tiny hole with, you know, one kid with a drill, you know, and by the end of the episode, the sort of cosmic level things that are happening, like, it's really interesting to reflect on that. But if you like spectacle and you like giant robots and hot-blooded pilots, then I think this is a show that you absolutely can't miss.
Yeah, it's definitely a show that increases exponentially. The early episodes are kind of what you would expect for a robot show to some degree. I mean, there's obviously things you don't expect, like great hippos and things like that. But there are, for the most part, it's they're in a robot and they fight other robots, and that's not. And there are, you know, 4 generals they have to take on, and all that stuff seems pretty, you know, by the book. But then once you cross about the midpoint, the show begins to ramp up faster and faster and faster, and things start happening.
Yeah.
That just sort of, they really just sort of, they flabbergast you. You're just like, well, what am I
And there's
even
like a middle
watching?
part where it takes kind of a political turn for a while. And, well, I don't want to get too heavy in the weeds, but then once again, it shifts back to a more battle-oriented super robot story when it becomes grand and cosmic.
So
No. I
sorry,
feel
go ahead,
like
Pat.
a lot of the structure of Gurren Lagann is simple and basic for the purposes of subverting the normal, like, tropes that would go on in a show like this. Like, a lot of the framework, like, a lot of it will sound incredibly simple on paper because it is, like, a very... You can follow the general part very easily so that they can subvert other parts of it or play other parts of it incredibly straight. Like, it's just... Like, it's very difficult, I feel, to give any, like, good summary of Gurren Lagann that doesn't give away the whole cake, but also makes you feel like you understand, like, what you're getting into.
Also, I think it is important to note that while the show, I think, is... and so, by the way, it's directed. I think it's the director... It's not the directorial debut, but I think it might be the television directorial debut for Hiroyuki Imaishi. Who would go on to found Studio Trigger. And this feels very much like a Trigger work if you're more familiar with things like Kill la Kill and Space Patrol Ludico and what have you. It feels in that vein, but it is the bridge between Gainax and Trigger.
Yeah. To back up for a second, the first episode of Re Cutie Honey, Imaishi directed. So it's
so I'm talking about the sort of the overall, like the lead director.
Oh no.
You know?
He was.
I know he's directed episodes, and you know he's directed. And Dead Leaves was his project. So I think like what what Suri alluded to, you know, the trope subversion and the fact that this show pays homage to a lot of past Gainax properties, like everything from Blazing Transfer Student to Evangelion to Die Buster, like, and also things like Get a Robo, which are not Gainax but are seminal super robot shows. One of the awesome things about this show is, like, you don't have to know any of those references to enjoy it. This can be your first Gainax show. Hell, it could be your first anime. I was speaking to someone recently who that was the case, that this was their first anime, and they were now a huge anime fan.
Yeah, I can see that.
Wow.
Which, this actually feels like a not terrible place to start someone off, rather than, like, you probably shouldn't start watching anime with, like, Evangelion, although a lot of people will do that. Please don't do that. That's not a great... That's a bad game plan.
It's certainly a plan, that's for sure. But no, yeah, it's definitely a very referential work to prior Gainax works and to sort of super robot shows as a genre, which is certainly, and I think initially it sort of felt like it was billing itself, and it was sort of, I think, sold to a lot of people as like an update to the super robot genre, but I don't know if that's really necessarily fair. It does use a lot of the tropes and a lot of the sort of tools in the super robot toolbox, but it doesn't. I don't know if I'd say it always feels like a super robot show, which is sort of an odd thing to say, I guess. It definitely becomes its own thing, rather early on, and sort of leaves that behind. It just not only in terms of scale, but just kind of the tonal shifts of it and some of the themes it's playing with. I don't think really, like, if you watch this and go, I like this, I'll like super robot shows, I don't know if that's necessarily going to track. You know what I'm saying? It just feels different enough, and I think. Because it was a new super robot show easily 15, 20 years after the heyday of super robot shows. I mean, even by the mid-'80s, it was, sort of passe, one might say. Real robots had become entrenched even then. I think a lot of people sold it as, probably people that maybe didn't have that much experience with super robot shows, sold it as the best super robot show ever. And I also don't really feel like it fits in that category either. It's definitely kind of its own beast. Even though it borrows from a lot of those tropes and a lot of those older shows.
The only thing I feel good about for us being 10 years after Gurren Lagann is that I don't have to listen to any of the people who look at all of the stuff that Gurren Lagann references and just be like, oh, well, it's just stealing blank from blank, as though transformative work doesn't exist. I'm very glad that we are far enough along where Gurren Lagann can be a classic, rather than people bitching like, oh, the classics were all better. It's like, oh, I just took this from Get a Robo, and like, you don't. No, guys, this can also be... Both of these things can be good.
Yeah,
what if everything's good?
It is its own thing, I think, and importantly so. And I think that's what actually helps it, like, stand the test of time, is the fact that it has its own attitude and its own things to say, as opposed to just being a retread. Like, I think... Like, you could see the show and also, like some of the new Get a Robo OAVs. Or I think the closest sort of comparison to me is Die Buster. I think there's a lot in common with this and Die Buster. And Imaishi did work on Die Buster quite a bit. But I think, like Grant mentioned, I mean, the show comes into its own and... definitely has its own view of the world and its own story to tell, and I think that totally is a huge part of what keeps it relevant and makes it a classic, where some of the other super robot shows that hardcore fans of the genre will look to, like, might not resonate as much with the general population.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So now, what did you guys think of it when you saw it then? What do you think of it now? Like, do you think it's held up? Like, has your opinion of it changed in the intervening years?
I still need to actually do that rewatch plan I have and just go through the whole series and, like, 100% confirm for myself if it holds up as much as I think that I think it does. Because there are some... I feel like even, like, a year or so after watching it the first time, like, I was aware of some, like, pacing problems of, like, the political bend of it, like, in the, like, 3/4 mark, I feel is important and necessary, but also, like, as a general watching thing, like, a lot of people are like, no, but the show's just bad for a couple episodes, and, like, I don't necessarily agree.
No.
I don't agree with that, but I kind of see as, like, an ultra-casual viewer just watching it for fun of just, like, okay, but the hero's in prison and can't do anything. This just... No, but just solve. It is kind of antithetical to what the rest of Gurren Lagann is, but that's also kind of the point of what is going on, which, unless I dive real deep into the weeds, I can't really expand upon that all that much.
We may get a chance to dive deep. I don't know, but just before I answer Grant's question, I'll just heartily disagree with the people that think that part of the show is outright bad. I do understand the frustration of the mob of Kamina City rushing to believe something that, you know, the viewer might think, oh, this is a flimsy story that this one character has concocted to put the hero character down, you know, put him in prison. But that's the mob, right? I mean, that's how mobs kind of work a lot of the time. And to be honest with you, watching this part of it now, it was real fucking weird for me. It was like a bizarro version of the real world, because the mob storms through Kamina City pulling down statues of Kamina. And like screaming, like they've obviously, like, they have they've forgotten their history. They don't have historical reference for, you know, what Simone did to make their lives better. They just want to throw them in prison. And it just seeing it now, you know, with what's going on in the United States, it was a weird experience watching that part, I have to say.
I actually liked this show when I first saw it, but I didn't love it. And I think my estimation of it has actually fallen quite a bit. When I tried to rewatch it a couple years ago, I liked it even less than the first time I saw it. I don't like to grade things, but I was definitely like, okay, this was fine. I think my biggest issue with it is how inconsistent it is in almost everything that it does. I feel like tonally, there's a huge tonal shift about midway through this series, and I think, for better or worse, it's a completely different shift, and it completely throws off the momentum that the show has. And I think by the end it picks back up, but there's a long drag, and then the fact that a lot of the thematic elements that it's playing with either don't pay off or are completely subverted by some things that happen in the end. That kind of shoots down that element too, which makes me go, well, then why did we have this big tonal shift if it wasn't going to pay off? And so I'm really only left with the mecha action, which is really, really good, and I enjoy that, especially the kind of kineticism of it. But and there's only really one character I actually kind of like. Most of the characters are kind of grating, or just rehashes of one another and repeats, which is kind of a letdown too. So I really, really like the mecha action, and I think it's I think it still looks fantastic. I think the show as a whole, I think I shouldn't have revisited it.
Wow.
Fundamentally.
Oof.
Like, I think I should have just let it stay kind of a memory. I
have
not
heard a couple other people say similar stuff, which is what is inspiring me to be like, nah, I gotta know for sure.
Okay, so I first watched it in like 2009, 2010, so definitely not right when it came out, but like I think pretty early on when it was available for like legal streaming. So early on that the subtitles, like that the Japanese version was not available. They were only streaming the dub. And I watched it right after my daughter was born. And so late at night, right, this is like, I mean, we're just home from the hospital, and like we're staying up all night holding, you know, our infant baby so that she can sleep, and so that so that my wife can sleep. And so I'm watching Gurren Lagann while doing this, and I absolutely loved it back then. It was one of my most favorite things. It was one of the first robot shows I saw. It helped get me into the genre, helped make me the mecha fan I am today. And revisiting it, which I've never done a full revisit until this podcast. Like, I started to a couple times here and there and fell off, but like this time I revisited it and I watched the movies, and oh my god, the movies are fantastic. Like, they look incredible. Like, they have really, really made those things look spectacular, especially the battle scenes, and especially the second film. A lot of it has been reanimated and redone, whereas in the first film, I think there's only about 20 minutes of new footage. There's a whole bunch more in the second. There's also a couple of brand new mecha designs in the second movie, which I'm told that, by the way, so the mecha designer for this is Yo Yoshinari, who you all might know from Little Witch Academia. Y'all probably talked about him last week. But so he actually he never did any like preliminary design work for those. Like the designs happened as he's animating the thing. So he's just drawing them
shit.
like in the frames, you know what I mean? There's no concept art.
Wow.
He's just doing it, and that's just incredible. But
That okay.
As you do.
All of those designs are really good, and that is
Yeah.
amazing.
yeah, they're spectacular. But this show totally holds up for me. Just as a concluding thought, I will just say for me, it 100% holds up. Like I don't know if I would say it's one of my favorite. I don't know if I'd say it's one of my favorite mecha things, but like I feel very, very strongly about it still thematically and in terms of like the battles and the characters. I can't really think of a character that I don't like in this show. To be honest with you, like I love Kamina, Simone, Yoko, Kittan, Leeron. Like I love all the characters like a lot. And Boota, I mean, how are you gonna diss on Boota, Grant? Come on.
Watch me. 30 minutes of the podcast of me just trashing on Boota, just nonstop.
Sunglasses wearing mole. He's perfect. No, I think like, and we can get into like why we think it's important and holds up later, but just as an answer to your question, like yeah, for me, holds up, worthy of its status as a classic, totally.
So, what's the standout moment of the series for you guys? Like, is there a particular moment that, like, when you think of Gurren Lagann, like that's what you think of, like this one scene or this one episode or something like that?
There are a couple. The first Giga drill break, that's a big one.
Almost every time I've gotten like a new computer or something, or like a new monitor, like I've put on episode 25 of Gurren Lagann just to watch it, just to see how good shit looks. And also like that, like everything about that feels like a crystallization of like everything that leads up to that point. And for some reason it is, because there's a couple bits like that where it's both like, it's that one specifically feel like the first Giga Drill Breaker is like amazing and like triumphant to an extent, but the low emotionally that the show instills after that is huge, whereas the ending for 25 is very similar and is very clearly meant to mirror what happens then, but is a lot more triumphant without such a, because with the first Giga Drill Break, after that, it's like, how can we possibly come back from this? What is the next, where is there after this? Whereas the ending of 25 is explicitly, I'm doing this so we can continue. So there is a step 2. And
Well, the step two of the first one is Nia. That's where they go.
No.
and
Like
that's-
the step 2, yeah, but like that's it. That's like a next episode thing. That's like a, not something that you know before the moment happens.
Right.
Whereas
Right,
25 is very much like a conscious heroic sacrifice.
So I mentioned the Giga Drill Break and the different special attacks. Those are really great. Like for me, the two things that I always think about when I first think about this show are the like just the really absurd moments. Like because I mean I love spectacle when it's the scale and scope of it is just absolutely bonkers. And there's a moment when one robot grabs a galaxy and throws it at another robot like a shuriken and embeds it in the robot. And that is just like there's not another show that goes to that level of absurdity. But the absurdity I feel like is not simply for its own sake. like the spectacle is huge and can be appreciated as spectacle, but like I think that the stakes continually rising and such that there are probability altering warheads, by the way, in this fucking show, among other things, like the stakes continually rising and the main character's mettle and philosophy being tested over and over and kind of still standing still standing those tests, still coming out on top, still being shown as solid and true by the end, after all those just ridiculous challenges. Like to me that makes the absurdity not entirely like throwaway silly, and makes it a little bit more interesting. But those like over the top moments, like it's hard not for me to think of over the top when I think of Gurren Lagann. And when we're not talking about spoilers, like if we're talking spoilers, I think we all have a thing we think about.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I guess for myself, I don't think it's much of a spoiler really, but early on in the show, the first time Simone and Kamina's robots combine, they literally just sort of slam them together and just sort of will them into combining, and it looks like it's totally jacked them up, but in fact they just sort of magically form and like get a unified color scheme. And I remember being like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. That's cool. Like I knew exactly what I was in for, and that was, I think, was probably one of the better moments for me.
It's like it's the riffing on, and again, you don't need to know this, but like if you've ever seen the Getter robots combine in any fashion, I think Gerald from AWO said it best. It just looks like they're mashing together 3 lumps of clay. Like at no point does it look physically possible to get the robot, that concludes from the combining. And so I think Gurren Lagann, there's a little bit of a nod to it when, yes, like the off-center brotherly combining at the beginning results in something super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the moment for me right there, because it's just like, okay,
in order to get like the Getter Robo stuff to make sense, like they need in like Getter Robo Armageddon, they have to like have like 2 minutes devoted to showing you like fucking nanoparticles and shit, just like going all over the place. Of like, no, it's real. It like that's totally, this is a thing. This will happen. Whereas
we need to do a Getter Robo Armageddon podcast.
Oh boy, do we! Boy, do we! Yeah.
So, do you guys have a particularly favorite villain or anything from the show that stands out? Because there's a cavalcade of baddies to choose from.
It's hard not to think about Viral.
Viral is like the dude for this.
I mean,
although
Viral's fantastic. I love Viral's arc tremendously. I think it's really interesting, really compelling. He's a great character. I like it when he yells. It gets me pumped.
Okay. Both Viral and Lord Genome are real good. Lord Genome more for like presence than like actual characterization.
Right.
Because like a lot of like context for like Lord Genome's character is like not even in the show. It's like parallel works like 7 or 8 or something.
Which, by the way, can I just say they put those in the movies?
Oh, that's true. The first or second movie, they do add a part of that as like part of the backstory. I forgot about that. Thank you.
In the beginning. I think it's Parallel Works 8 at the very beginning.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds correct. Because they wouldn't put the opening scene of the TV series in the beginning of the first movie for reasons.
They show how the planet came to be the desolate wasteland that it is at the beginning.
So this is kind of like an oddball one, but a longtime friend of mine developed like there are very specific villain type characters that she likes, and of like the 4 generals, the Scorpion Lady is very much one of those. And Adiane, so she is kind of like by proxy through her, I kind of really like her as a villain. Of like all of the extra stuff that she is like, no, but she's a good villain because of X, Y, and Z, and then like 15-minute discussions of like, you're incredibly right. All of those things are in the show that they accidentally Because, like, with the interviews of, like, the Trigger and Gynex people, a lot of the animation and writing staff are just like, huh, that is in there. That's cool. I'm just like, yeah, that did happen.
There's like a DeLandau-esque part where, you know what I mean? If you've seen
I
Vision
love
of
Escaflowne.
There's
Escaflowne's real
there's
good.
a part where Ariane just is like, okay, Viral, explain it to me. And he starts to talk, and she slaps him. And he's like, what? And she's like, no, go ahead, finish.
Okay,
and he starts to talk again, and she just slaps him with the scorpion tail and just continually does it.
Just every other word, just smashing him in the face with the full force of her tail. Just like, keep talking. You're not done explaining yet.
It's really good. I love that scene. Good. It's a great scene.
There's a bunch of stuff in the movies that are added and are really good, or changed and are really good, but there are a lot of very, very good scenes from the television series that are cut or truncated for time in the movies. So the thing in episode 8 happens, and Viral doesn't know about it until episode 12, I think.
Right.
And he's like, hey, what happened? What happened?
It's in the movie, or at least
no,
it is a thing that happens.
No, okay,
I
no.
don't know
in the movie, it is one line that he just says before the big action sequence at the end of the movie happens. Of like, what, that happened, and then the movie just keeps going. Whereas in the TV series, like, he
not
literally,
exactly, but it is not as much.
In the TV show, he explicitly, like, stops the fight, gets out of the mech, and is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, most definitely. I think for myself, I probably like the aerial guy,
Cytomander, yeah.
Cytomander. Okay, yeah, I think that's probably my favorite one, just because I really liked the aerial battle. I thought it was, I don't know, that was different enough. I really enjoyed that sequence, so that was my favorite of the generals, because each one kind of had a little theme. You know, the little turtle guy and all that kind of stuff. So you had these different themes for each of the 4 generals. I think the Cytomancer one was probably my favorite, just because the aerial element was nice. It was a different feel. So what do you guys think about Gurren Lagann just like as a robot, like in the sort of the pantheon of robots, super or real? How do you feel Gurren Lagann stacks up with the others as a design, as power level, like whatever metrics you want to use?
Well, this is a tough one. I don't know. I don't really think about things in these terms very much. Like, I mean, I love the design, and the thing about the shows, there's just so freaking many Gurren Lagann iterations and designs. Like, it's hard to.
Let's just stick with the core, kind of the standard look that it has for most of the show.
I mean, it's really great. It's really great. I may have mentioned this on a Wave Motion pod before. It reminds me of some of the, I'll use this word even though I don't want to, edgier designs from Gundam X. And they seem like they would fit quite nicely into Gurren Lagann. The mechs that the Frost brothers specifically have in those shows, but no, I really like the design. I love all the crazy things they do with it. I love all the drills, and I can't really think of a bad iteration. I mean, I enjoy it. It looks great. It's really powerful. I don't think it like cracks my my top favorites list just in terms of design though.
Gurren Lagann specifically?
Okay.
Correct.
I would.
Yeah,
I would put it like way up there. I really, really love basic Gurren Lagann, but also every iteration of that mech is very. Basic Gurren is a little pudgy, but like.
Yeah.
Little basic and just like little. But no,
He only has one face.
You only got the one face. No, you need the 2 faces. You gotta have 2 faces. You need to have at bare minimum 2 faces. That's just a rule.
That's a rule. That's just
2 faces are better than 1 face. What are you talking about?
Kamina knew. That's why they combined. So
we have 2 faces. You only have 1. Yeah. We're gonna win.
Yeah, I think Gurren Lagann, the sort of standard design that we know, that most of the series, I think I really enjoy it. again, I think like Subs, I don't know if I'd put it in like a top 5 or a top 10 or something if
I probably would.
push comes to shove. But like when I think of Gurren Lagann, I think about it, I go, yeah, it's a really good design, and I think it's the it's got, red and black is a nice color scheme. I mean, it works. I think the thing that really sets it apart for me is the giant V shades on the chest, because the sort of V iconography, it mimics, kind of Mazinger or Mazinkaiser and some of those designs that I really like. Very simple, kind of chevron look, but because Kamina wears those shades, and the chest is a face. I like that the robot itself is mimicking the pilot, and the pilot the robot. I think it's a really great connection. Like, it's kind of like those things like when they say, oh, dogs look like their owners, or owners look like their dogs, or whatever. Like, it kind of has that feel. Like, I think it kind of intrinsically links the machine with the pilot in a really fun way, without making it just look like the pilot. You know what I'm saying? And it's because it's got the face on the face. It has the sort of standard, humanoid anatomy, but at the same time, it's not. It's just weird enough because you're like, oh yeah, that's right. It has a giant face for a chest. Like, it just doesn't have a normal torso, so it can kind of emote in different ways, which is a lot of fun. So I think the standard design is really, really good, and the drill attack theme works really, really well. I think that's probably one of my favorite things about the show, even though I don't think the thematics of drills in the show is ever really. I think if you poke and prod at it too much, it deflates very quickly. I think it's, pay no attention to the drill behind the curtain. But I think the visual thematic of drills is really well done and really sets it apart from your standard, like, oh, I just have like a heat ray I shoot out of my elbow or whatever. Super robots all have just like generic beam rays, but this thing shoots drills, which is cool and different.
I think I
So,
disagree
I like that
on the thematics of like the drill
Same.
not working, but like I feel like you can poke and prod, and it's like, it's not perfect, but I feel like you can do that with most things, and I don't feel like it falls apart more especially than any other like thematic element like that would, because like turn by turn, inch by inch, little bit by little bit, we move forward. I feel like that goes pretty well. And it's literally just taking like iconography,
guess
like old Super Robot stuff, and applying it in its own way.
Right, and sort of tying it into the evolution of man.
Because yeah,
Interesting.
See, I guess my counterpoint there would be that, like, I agree that I'm glad that they tried to do something with it, unlike most Super Robot shows where they just have attacks that have names and themes that you just sort of have to put together yourself. But I think, again, without getting into spoiler territory, the sort of notion of progress and going places and all that, I don't know if it pays off. So it's like, well, then why did we waste all our time talking about it, I guess, is my issue.
Okay.
Like, for me, it doesn't pay off, so it feels like a lot of wasted airtime.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you think by the end they haven't really progressed, then yeah, it's gonna seem silly. But I don't know. For me, like I said earlier, like I think it totally pays off, especially on the most grandiose stage possible there at the end. And I guess I can sort of use this time to transition to like why I think it's an enduring work. And I think it is the thematics and the very positive, very enthusiastic, very, like, I would call this anime like life affirming. And to me, like, that is always what I get when I watch it, is like that this show is life affirming. This show fucking believes in you. Even if you don't believe in yourself, it believes in you, and so you need to believe in the show that believes in you, right? And I think that quality to it, like, there's just, I don't know, there's not like a show that goes for that in the way that this show does, and maybe not even as hard as this show does. And I think, gosh, at every turn, things get dark, but there is a very intentional and I think poignant and like well delivered message of like, you can do it. You have someone who believes in you. You should believe in yourself. Press on, press forward. Like, and then just the show itself, the way it's animated, the way it moves, the way it sparkles and looks, the way that everything has the style to it is just so, like, it's just buoyant. It is a buoyancy, enthusiasm that I find absolutely contagious. And when I watch it, I just feel it. I feel warm and good and alive. And it's, again, why I think the show will continue to endure.
I'm with you on that.
Okay, well, without getting into spoiler territory, here's what I'll say. I would agree with you 135 drilling percents if the show stopped at the midpoint. Like, if it ended at the sort of midpoint of the show, I'd be like, I agree. What a great assessment of this wonderful program. All the themes, everything, that totally tracks and lines up. No disagreement there. The second half, I think, frays all of that and betrays all of those themes, in fact. The show ends up being
I'd be very
pure
curious
spectacle.
to know, to read or hear, like, how, like, your analysis of how that happens. Because, I mean, it just doesn't fall apart for me. And it totally... I don't know. For me, it remains true, despite like we talked about, like the tonal step and then kind of step back, right? And it's where it wants to be more Evangelion, and then it decides again to be, Die Buster there at the end. Like, I don't know. I mean, just But anyway, you know where I stand. But I'm curious how it works for you. But go ahead, Suri. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm pretty much with subs on this, like, through and through. Like, I feel like there is a bit of, like, wavering around the point we are discussing in terms of, like, I don't feel it's betraying, like, its ideals so much as it is showing, like, hey, like, there is a certain level, like... I feel like the way that it's going is that how it's trying to approach the show is that there are other, like, methods of tackling problems, and that different problems require different solutions, and that being, like, relentlessly positive and relentlessly just, like, forward, progress is not end-all, be-all, the only option, but in some scenarios it should be, like, the overall, like, feeling, and diverging too far away into pragmatism can, like, get you, like, regressive in a way. Like, if we need to start going into, like, spoilers before I can, like, break down a lot of that, but I overall feel that, like, even in the end, like, I feel like there are very few shows that I feel like a lot of the times shows that get bandied around as, like, no, but this is really good, this is so good, like, 9 times out of 10 they're not, like, most shows that would be described by pretty much, I feel like there's so few things that are, like, this relentlessly positive. Like, even in the dark hours of the show, like, it is striving towards, like, positivity and, like, self-affirmation in ways that I feel go really well. And, like, for me personally, in, like, some bad times in my life and some bad times in my friends' time of life, like, this went real well towards, like... Because, like, I was in high school when I watched this the first time, and, like, a lot of my friends all kind of at the same time were in on this, and I feel like it kind of really did, like, it was kind of, like, at that level of, like, important show for me. And I gotta know how well it actually holds up to adult me. So I am gonna, like, go through, like, a full rewatch on this, but, like, I definitely see, okay, from not having rewatched it in a couple of years, like, probably a while now at this point, actually, I definitely see where your viewpoint on this could be valid, and maybe I will agree with you after I rewatch it. But I feel like the previous times that I've watched this, I've had the thoughts that you've had, and on watching it, I'm like, nah, still good. Nah, I still feel like it goes for it and does it. But who knows? Maybe I'll disagree with you soon. Maybe I will agree with you soon.
Well, and I think I don't think it's bad. Like, my issues with it don't, like, make me go, ugh, bad. I wish I hadn't watched it. That's certainly not. It's not that bad. I think it's good. But I think because of its tonal issues and pacing issues, and because they don't mesh for me, it makes me go, well, I'm just hanging around for the fight sequences fundamentally, because I feel like a lot of that other stuff gets left on the wayside or betrayed or whatever. And again, I think if the show stopped at the middle point with the first battle with the Spiral King, with that battle, I think if it had ended there,
you've ruined the show for me.
I would have
not going to watch it now.
I would be probably.
I know they fight someone called the Spiral King. I'm out.
super.
Spiral King.
I know. If they had stopped at that fight, I think it would have been exactly what it needed to be. But I think the addition of the second season, a lot of the stuff that goes down there, actually, I think more is less in this instance for me. Even though the fight sequences in the second half are what I usually reflect on and really enjoy. You know, the chucking galaxies at one another and stuff like that. I love those fight sequences, and I love some of the probability altering subdimensional drill missiles.
They have the
that's
final
my jam.
battle
I love
in like
that
a
stuff.
pocket dimension.
A lot of stuff that's
where thought becomes reality.
Yeah, like that
and,
stuff is
like, it's just and the character can become
like,
reanimated. It's
like,
just bizarre and insane.
Right. Like, just slather that stuff on.
That's
both
what we're
sides of
here
the bread,
for, man. That's what we
I'm
watch
all
anime
about
for.
It, right, but I think for me now, Gurren is a show that I watch clips of. I don't have any desire to revisit the show really ever again. Let's do a couple of Patreon questions, and then we'll thank our new Patreon donors and pledgers.
Which, by the way, you too can get your questions submitted to the show if you are a Patreon backer at the minimum level. Like, you can back us at any level and have the privilege and honor of asking us a question that we'll answer on the show.
I dub thee donor and pledger to the canon of waviest motions. No, let's take this first one from Joey M. Do you think Yoko's outfit distracts from her personally, if or not so?
Joey.
Okay. Do you think Yoko's outfit distracts from her personally, if why or why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
100%.
It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for it not to, because there's not a lot of outfit there. But having said that, I still really, really like her character. Like, fan service and all. Like, it included all of the fan service, the outfit, the personality, her relationship to Kamina, her relationship to Simone, her relationship to Kittan, like all that. Like, I love all of it. I'm into it. I really like her as a character. The show would be less without her.
Yeah, I really enjoy Yoko as a character. I think the problem is that her outfit becomes her character. Becomes the focus of that character. I think if you change the outfit, you get to see the
100%.
Yoko that's there. If that makes sense.
See, I feel that way about the gun.
With
I think the gun is what they lean on, like,
No, but
more
they
than the outfit.
No, because okay.
I mean, you search Gurren Lagann and you tell me if sniper rifles come up or if something else comes up. Put that in Google image search.
She's
Tell me
also
what
supposed
pops
to be
up.
like
So
14
you
in the
tell
first
me,
arc,
okay?
which like you're lying. You're lying to me.
Right. Yeah, it's
Oh my
pretty.
God.
Yeah, one of the
It's like
lines.
no,
says
like
Know
I'm
that.
sorry, writers,
There's
you're
that.
lying. Like
That's-
she'd be
Can't
20.
be true.
She even to the extent of she's supposed to be 21 in the second half. I'm like, no, you're still lying to me.
Yeah.
You're still lying to me, show.
I agree.
Yeah, or
I agree. There's just no way.
I mean, for example, you mentioned oh,
He's
how
great.
can you hate on the little mole with the sunglasses? Well, the way he's used in the show,
all right, fair.
I can hate on that. he serves a pretty particular function. I'm just saying. So, and it relates to Yoko and her outfit.
He also gives spiral power to Simon at the end. That's the function that he's the whoop, the scales
said
are
in
equaling out.
defense.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really what people remember him for, his spiral power. I think one of the things that's interesting about Gurren Lagann is that it exists when it came out, and even those few years afterwards, we weren't quite in the social media landscape that we are now. I'm curious to see, if this were to come out episodic in 2017 and in Twitter, what the take. I'm just kind of curious if this was coming out week to week, kind of in that format, what that would be, because
I feel like a lot less people would have bailed after episode 8. Because I know a bunch of people that are just like, nope, show's over. And then just stopped. And then just stopped. And then just stopped. And a decade later, you're like, nope, not going back. I'm done.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the bailing after episode 8, because when this was coming out, right before streaming was a thing, and people were torrenting fan subs, from what I have heard, people weren't really watching the show at first. It was not until 2chan made such a big fuss over episode 4 and how off model it was, and then the
Episode
guy,
4,
the animator got kicked off,
That's what I
and
always
that
heard.
sort of like kind of stirred people up and got people to pay attention to the show, and then it really started rolling after that.
Yeah.
I can.
That was
see
always
this.
what I
remember.
Man, that's still like a feel bad story. Like, I didn't.
Yeah. That's always the scuttlebutt that I'd heard.
Oh, yeah, no,
but
there
I
are- you can
wasn't
dig up
connected
news
to the community
stories.
in that way in 2007. So this was one of the brief shows that I popped out of my hiatus and like watched, and then just kind of went back into remission. I was like, farewell.
What's so
I
funny
returned
when
to
you
my
look
cave.
at like the other things that were coming out around it? Like, I feel like that what might have helped it is like anime was still in like the moe boom. You know what I mean? And like there was a lot of really sort of not that this is not me having a problem with moe. This is me saying like compared to a lot of subdued, kind of more sedate slice of life work. I mean, imagine Gurren Lagann popping up on your screen between Haruhi Suzumiya and Lucky Star. Wham! There's a hot cup of coffee.
I mean, that's part of why I watched it was because of that. I was like, whoa, a robot show now.
Which is a little funny,
what it's
actually, because
like.
I'm looking at. I'm
it
going
wasn't-
back in a little Wayback Machine to spring 2007, and it
Okay.
apparently started at the same time as Bokurano.
They're like the hyper serious, like
Yes.
Evangelion-esque sort
Yes.
of. Yeah, man. That's
Literally,
like,
like within a week of each other.
that is a very different robot show.
Man, this is. I'm
Peanut
looking at
butter
this
and jelly.
spring 2007, and there's a lot of fucking trash. There's a lot of good in here, but like, Devil May Cry aired that season.
Oh Lord.
But also like Denno Coil aired that season. But also like Hayate the Combat Butler aired that season.
Who could forget?
No, I was just gonna say. So I think that probably is gonna wrap us up today for the weekly motion canon. I think we've hashed out. I think most people who watched it at least remember some portion of it quite fondly. I think if you've never seen it before, I think it's important to watch Gurren Lagann just to see a pretty important show from last decade. Gosh, it's weird saying that, but I think it's a relevant show to watch, and I think was probably a pretty formative experience for a number of anime fans. So I definitely recommend it, and even though I had a lot of things to say, and I'm sure I'll complain more once we get off air, I don't think it's a bad show by any means. I just think that it reaches for a certain height, and for me it doesn't quite grab it, but it's still a good show. It's still a good robot show. If you enjoy super robots, or think you might enjoy them, I think it's at least worth some of your time, certainly.
At the end of the show, we'd like to go ahead and take a moment to thank the $10 backers on our Patreon. So at this moment, we'd like to give a special shout out to Aname, Osama_A, Cornelia Natsidi, Chris Magnifito, and Ben Grant. Again, thank you very much for your donation. It means a lot to us and it helps us keep the site going. Again, thank you very much.
But guys, why don't you tell them where can the people find you?
I am
Introduce.
still at Surrybot on Twitter, and that is where I live now. That is my home. That is the only place you will ever find me for the foreseeable future. And also, wavemotioncanon.com specifically.
I am also on Twitter at The Subtle Doctor. You can reach me there, talk about whatever. You can send me a Curious Cat at curiouscat.me/thesubtledoctor if you want to ask me a question or receive an answer that is longer than 140 characters. You can read my writing on wavemotioncanon.com, on the Fandom Post, and I even have a One Piece up on Crunchyroll. Hope to have more in the future. You can hear this wonderful voice on the Watery Death Show podcast, WARUIDESHOU. If you search for that on iTunes or SoundCloud or YouTube, you will find us there. Subscribe if you want to hear, some more terrible ramblings.
Well, great. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Grant the Thief, where I post all sorts of nonsense. And if you want to see my writings, I write at Wave Motion blog, just like these guys here. Should have, hopefully, a piece coming out in the next week or so, I would hope. And you can find me on the various pods that we do here. You can also find me at my my home pod, if you will, the Blade Licking Thieves, where a couple of buddies and I review Eastern media and just talk all sorts of silly shenanigans. But guys, thanks so much for being on. Thanks for talking about the Giga Drills and the breaks and all that sort of thing. All right, guys, thanks so much for being on, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye. We love you.
Keep fighting the power.